think I've grown with the business and also started understanding how we could strategically unlock value for our shareholders in the end. So it's certainly been a bit of a roller coaster, but very exciting and never a dull moment.
Tell me about that roller coaster. What's your sense of the industry right now, especially when you look back at the time that you've spent in it? What has changed? What has more or less remained the same?
Yeah, I think what has certainly changed is in the last while you would have seen a huge amount of new entrants. So I think on the supplier side and the OEM side, your traditional OEMs are no longer, the flavor of the month, although you can see that they are working quite hard to still remain relevant. I think what has stayed the same is that you still have end consumers with a particular need, and this need is mobility. So whether it's now or 10 years ago, I think we still have a industry and also a consumer out there who demands a particular level of service and at an affordable price to be able to move around. Unfortunately, if we talk South Africa, everyone here do need mobility, and if you've got a job, that's what you probably need, is you need a vehicle to move around. I think the other areas that we play in the other geographies are slightly different, and there's a lot to learn how they've adapted and changed over the times as well. So there's quite a nice balance between the challenges in the different geographies. I do believe, however, that if you move fast forward a little bit, things will change even faster. And I think in that particular case, we've had to invest quite heavily into innovation, digitization in the last while to really stay relevant and stay ahead of the game. As a market leader playing in so many different parts of this automotive sector, you get challenged, by competitors and the like on a continuous basis. So you have to adapt on all fronts, and that's certainly been a challenge.
Speaking of adapting, you mentioned that there are new entrants coming into the market. How have you had to respond to those new entrants? Not just in South Africa, but let's talk about whether these new entrants, are you seeing them as well in the UK and Australia?
No, most certainly. So when you talk about the larger OEMs, in this case it would be mainly the new vehicles coming from Asia. So you'll see India is a particular strong player in South Africa, but they're not relevant in, for instance, the UK or Australia. And on the Chinese front, I think they've already entered Australia much earlier, and you can see one or two of those manufacturers becoming household names there. And that gives you a good sense if you sort of make it as an OEM in a big market like the UK or in the case of Australia, you'll probably find that over time that they will be able to also have their fair share of the market in South Africa. So certainly you can learn from those experiences, but our vehicle demands are slightly different. We do drive smaller vehicles, and that's why the likes of India is quite important to us. We visit that country quite often to understand exactly where those markets are moving, and that's the vehicles we currently have in those real entry-level side. So more Indian than Chinese in the entry level.
One of the things that's quite interesting about your business, and perhaps some others as well, is you're geared towards interest rates as well. And I think we were talking about how the past couple of years has been higher for longer, and we saw that impact on consumers. Coming into 2024, we were kind of looking for that reprieve, but given the moving parts coming out of the US, you almost get a sense that central banks might have to stand pat and sort of see how these policies play out. What does that mean for your South Africa consumer when interest rates probably remain the way they are currently for the remainder of the year, and now you have to factor in another aspect that could affect growth, and that's the load shedding boogeyman that started 25 minutes ago?
Yeah, you certainly want to have a bit more good news when you start your career as a CEO, I would think. But the reality is, I think the 75 basis points we didn't have, at least we've got it now. That certainly would have driven the consumer in a bit more of a positive space. In a lot of cases, you'll find that people buy on installments. So those installments is the main factor, and you have to obviously factor that in. So 75 basis points will probably take. I think we needed at least 100 to really make a meaningful impact. So maybe we still get another 25. Don't expect it to really much further down, and maybe another one or two could be nice. But I think on the load shedding front, we've had it before. We probably have it now. I think a lot of consumers in the end had to adapt to that. So I think that's probably not the biggest factor for us. But I think the interest rates, we would have liked a few more points.
Yeah. What's the demand like on the corporate side and the warranty work that you do with the OEMs?
So I think on the corporate side, you normally find that a lot of the big corporates are still into the fleet side of business. So big fleets are still moving. So where we've seen the world become more digital, you've actually find a quite an interesting move in a lot more commercial vehicles. And we see it, for instance, in the UK, where we're playing a much bigger part in commercial vehicles than in passenger. And on that particular front, you can see how the world has actually changed. The more digital you become, the more you require big commercial vehicles, panel vans, etc., to deliver those products to the end consumers. So less passenger, more commercial. So that's why I say you have to stay on your toes the whole time. It does change from market to market as well.
Staying on your toes, I'm sure is something that you're very good at, and I'm sure you've got an incredible team working with you at Motus. Over the next year or two, what can sort of, not just your customers, but also the market look forward to in terms of some of the plans that you may have? What does that look like for you in the next 2 years when you look at Motus?
So I think we strategically well positioned as we're playing across these different markets. So that has certainly been the bedrock of how we've been able to be successful. I think the largest big play that we've got is we're investing a lot in our people at the moment. I think we need to upskill them into a different market where our customers' needs have changed. So becoming more digital savvy, for instance, and that's probably one of the biggest factors we've had to do internally. I think on the external front, we would certainly look to still grow progressively in those markets that we've entered in recently. For instance, the aftermarket parts, and that's a market we've just really started playing in. And this is really our bedrock is you stay with the customer and you stay with the vehicle for as long as possible. So, and that is really how you derive your in value for your shareholders.